Matthew Carter stepped off the interstellar transport onto the alien soil of Xylox 7, his heart pounding with the weight of humanity's hopes. As the first human ever admitted to the prestigious Galactic Academy of Sciences, he carried the burden of proving Earth's worth to a skeptical galactic community. The 22-year-old's arrival marked a pivotal moment in human-alien relations. Earth's government had invested vast resources in Matthew's education and preparation, gambling on his success to elevate humanity's standing among the stars. As he took his first breath of Xylox 7's atmosphere, Matthew felt the pressure of billions of human lives resting on his shoulders. A stern Tak official named Krastok greeted Matthew with a cold, calculating gaze. "Human Matthew Carter," Krastok's voice crackled through a translation device. "I am here to inform you of the Academy's policies and the challenges you face as the sole human student." Krastok's words cut through the air like a knife. "Many alien races view humans as primitive and unworthy of galactic citizenship. Your performance here will determine whether that perception changes." Matthew nodded, his jaw set with determination. As Krastok led him through the sprawling campus, the human's eyes widened at the sight of imposing architecture and advanced technology that dwarfed anything he'd seen on Earth. Alien students of various species regarded him with a mix of curiosity, disdain, and outright hostility. The vast technological gap between Earth and the galactic community became painfully apparent as Matthew passed by laboratories filled with equipment he couldn't even begin to comprehend. The realization of how much he needed to prove himself settled in his gut like a lead weight. Krastok assigned Matthew to a dormitory shared with other non-Tak species, explaining that the dominant Tak race maintained separate living quarters. As Matthew unpacked his meager belongings in his small room, he couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by the alienness of his surroundings. Suddenly, a commotion in the corridor caught his attention. Matthew's instincts kicked in, and he rushed to investigate. In the hallway, he witnessed a group of Tak students taunting and physically intimidating a female alien of a species he didn't recognize. Without hesitation, Matthew intervened. His human strength and combat training, honed through years of preparation for this moment, allowed him to fend off the aggressors. The Tak students, caught off guard by the human's unexpected prowess, retreated quickly. As the dust settled, Matthew turned to the alien he had defended. His breath caught in his throat as he found himself face to face with the most captivating being he had ever encountered. The alien's bioluminescent skin pulsed with soft, mesmerizing patterns, and her eyes held a depth of intelligence that seemed to peer into his very soul. "I am Draco," she introduced herself, her voice melodious and otherworldly. "Of the Zalthori species, thank you for your assistance." Matthew opened his mouth to respond, but their moment was abruptly interrupted by the arrival of Academy security, led by Krastok. The Tak official's eyes narrowed as he surveyed the scene. "Human Matthew Carter," Krastok's voice was laden with disapproval. "Your actions, while seemingly noble, have violated several Academy regulations regarding interspecies, interactions, and physical confrontations." Matthew's heart sank as he realized the implications. He faced potential expulsion before his first class had even begun, jeopardizing not only his own future, but humanity's standing in the galactic community. As Krastok escorted Matthew to the disciplinary office, the human exchanged a meaningful glance with Draco. In that brief moment, he sensed a connection, a feeling that their paths were now inexorably linked. Despite the looming threat of expulsion, Matthew couldn't shake the feeling that his encounter with Draco was just the beginning of something far greater than he could have ever imagined. Matthew's heart raced as he stood before the disciplinary board, a panel of alien faces regarding him with inscrutable expressions. The gravity of the situation burdened immensely on his shoulders as he awaited their verdict. "Human Matthew Carter," intoned the chief adjudicator, a towering Zilonian with iridescent scales. "Your actions have placed us in a difficult position. The use of physical force against fellow students is a serious offense." Matthew opened his mouth to speak, but a melodious voice cut through the tense atmosphere. "Esteemed members of the board, I request permission to testify." All eyes turned to see Draco, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with a soft, determined glow. The board members exchanged glances before nodding their assent. Draco's testimony painted a vivid picture of the altercation, emphasizing the unprovoked nature of the Tok student's aggression and Matthew's swift intervention. Her words seemed to resonate with several board members, their expressions softening as she spoke. When she finished, Matthew stepped forward, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil. "Honored members of the board, I understand that my actions may have violated Academy regulations. However, on Earth, we believe in standing up for those who cannot defend themselves. It's not just a cultural value, but a core part of our identity as humans." The room fell silent as the board deliberated. Minutes stretched like hours until finally the chief adjudicator spoke. "Matthew Carter, while your actions were misguided, we recognize the cultural differences at play. Instead of expulsion, you will be placed on probation. Consider this a chance to learn and adapt to our ways." Relief washed over Matthew, but it was short-lived. As he exited the hearing room, he found Krastok waiting, the Tok's face set in a stern mask. "Human," Krastok's translator crackled, "I have been assigned as your probation officer. Understand this. Any further infractions will result in your immediate expulsion and potentially damage Earth's standing in the galactic community." The following days were a whirlwind of activity. News of Matthew's confrontation spread through the Academy like wildfire, turning him into an overnight sensation. Alien students watched him with a mix of fascination and wariness, their whispered conversations falling silent as he passed. In his first xenobiology class, Matthew struggled to keep up with the advanced concepts. The professor, a gelatinous Melvarian, was discussing the intricacies of multidimensional cellular structures, a topic far beyond Earth's current scientific understanding. "Carter," the professor's voice bubbled, "please demonstrate the proper use of the quantum resonance imager." Matthew approached the sleek alien device with trepidation. Its control panel was a maze of unfamiliar symbols and pulsating lights. He reached out, hesitating for a moment before pressing what he hoped was the activation sequence. The machine hummed to life, projecting a holographic image of a complex molecular structure. A wave of relief washed over Matthew, only to be shattered by a sudden ear-piercing screech. The hologram flickered and distorted, collapsing into a chaotic swirl of light and color. Laughter rippled through the classroom as Matthew frantically tried to shut off the malfunctioning device. From the corner of his eye, he caught sight of Vexcor, a Tok student, quickly pocketing what looked like a small remote control. As the days wore on, similar accidents plagued Matthew's studies. In astrophysics, his stellar cartography projections inexplicably rearranged themselves into crude symbols. During a practical exam in xenochemistry, his carefully prepared solution suddenly changed color and texture, rendering hours of work useless. Each incident chipped away at Matthew's confidence, but he refused to give up. Late one night, as he pored over his studies in the vast Academy library, a familiar glow caught his attention. "You look like you could use some help," Draco said, sliding into the seat next to him. Her presence brought a sense of calm to Matthew's frazzled nerves. "Is it that obvious?" he asked with a rueful smile. Draco's eyes sparkled with sympathy. "Only to someone who knows what it's like to be an outsider here." As they worked through complex xenobiology concepts together, Matthew found himself opening up about the sabotage he'd been experiencing. Draco listened intently, her bioluminescence pulsing with concern. "I've seen Vexcor and his friends watching you," she said. "They're not subtle about their dislike for our friendship." Matthew sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I can't prove anything without risking my probation. If I make accusations without evidence, I'm done." Draco was quiet for a moment, her skin rippling with thoughtful patterns. "There might be a way," she said hesitantly. "My species' telepathic abilities. I could gather evidence of their plans." Matthew's eyes widened. "Draco, no. Using unauthorized telepathy could get you expelled too. I can't ask you to take that risk for me." Before she could respond, a shadow fell over their table. They looked up to see Vexcor looming over them, flanked by two other Tok students. "Well, well," Vexcor's translator crackled with scarcely controlled disdain. "The primitive and the pacifist. How quaint." Matthew felt his muscles tense, ready for a confrontation. But Draco's hand on his arm held him back, her touch a silent reminder of what was at stake. Vexcor leaned in, his voice low and menacing. "Enjoy your time here while you can, human. Sooner or later you'll slip up, and when you do, I'll be there to make sure you're sent back to your backwater planet where you belong." As Vexicor and his cronies sauntered away, Matthew and Draco exchanged a look of shared grit. They both knew that the real challenge was just beginning, and the choices they made in the coming days would shape not only their futures, but potentially the fate of human-alien relations for years to come. "Come." As Vexicor's footsteps faded into the distance, Matthew turned to Draco, his mind focused with quiet persistence. "We need a plan," he said, keeping his voice low. "I can't let them keep sabotaging my work, but I can't risk my probation either." Draco's bioluminescence pulsed thoughtfully. "Perhaps there's a way to expose their actions without direct confrontation." Matthew nodded, an idea forming in his mind. Over the next few weeks, he embarked on a meticulous campaign of documentation. Every accident, every snide comment, every suspicious malfunction, Matthew recorded it all. He discreetly accessed the Academy's surveillance systems, compiling video evidence of Vexicor and his cronies, tampering with equipment before Matthew's exams. But Matthew didn't stop there. He reached out to other alien students who had witnessed the harassment, carefully building a network of allies willing to provide statements. Many, inspired by Matthew's resilience, agreed to help. As Matthew gathered evidence, he threw himself into his studies with renewed vigor. Draco's patient tutoring and his own relentless work ethic began to pay off. In Professor Zixon's xenobiology class, Matthew's unique human perspective led him to a breakthrough. "The multidimensional cellular structures we've been studying," Matthew explained to the class, his hands moving animatedly as he manipulated the holographic display. "They remind me of how certain deep-sea creatures on Earth adapt to extreme pressures. What if we applied a similar principle to stabilize the cellular membranes during interstellar travel?" The class fell silent, all eyes on Matthew. Professor Zixon's gelatinous form rippled with excitement. "Fascinating, Mr. Carter. This could revolutionize our approach to long-distance space travel. Please elaborate further." As Matthew's academic reputation grew, so did Vexcor's resentment. The Tok student and his followers escalated their attacks, growing bolder and more reckless. The situation came to a head during a practical examination in the Academy's anti-gravity chamber. As Matthew donned his environmental suit, he failed to notice Vexcor slip away from his own preparation station, a small device clutched in his hand. Matthew entered the chamber, the airlock hissing shut behind him. As the gravity disengaged, he began the complex series of maneuvers required for the exam. Suddenly, his suit's systems flickered. Warning lights flashed across his helmet display as the environmental controls began to fail. Panic threatened to overwhelm Matthew as he struggled to breathe, but he forced himself to focus. Drawing on his training and human adaptability, he manually overrode the suit's malfunctioning systems. With one hand, he continued the exam procedures, while the other frantically adjusted his suit's life support. By the time Matthew completed the exam, sweat drenched his body, and his muscles screamed from the effort. As he exited the chamber, he saw the examining board's expressions shift from concern to awe. "Remarkable performance, Mr. Carter," the lead examiner said, mandibles clicking in approval. "Your ability to adapt under extreme duress is most impressive." Matthew's triumph was short-lived. As he left the examination area, he found Draco waiting for him, her bioluminescence pulsing with agitation. "Matthew," she said, her voice low and urgent, "I did something I shouldn't have." She explained how she had used her telepathic abilities to probe Vexicor's mind, uncovering not only evidence of his sabotage, but also hints of a larger conspiracy involving his father, a high-ranking Tok official. "There are factions within the Tok government actively working against Earth's integration," Draco whispered, her eyes darting nervously. "They fear human potential." Before Matthew could respond, a sharp buzz cut through the air. Draco's skin flashed with patterns of distress as two security officers approached. Draco of Zalthori, one officer stated, you are hereby suspended pending an investigation into unauthorized use of telepathic abilities. Please come with us. As Draco was led away, she cast one last, pained look at Matthew. He stood frozen, the weight of her revelation and the consequences of her actions crashing down upon him. In the days that followed, Matthew grappled with an impossible dilemma. He now possessed information that could expose VexCorp's misdeeds and the anti-human conspiracy, but using it would mean revealing Draco's violation of Academy rules. As Matthew pondered his next move, Professor Zixon approached him after class. Mr. Carter, a word please, the Quarian scientist beckoned. In the privacy of Zixon's office, the professor made an unexpected offer. Your recent work has caught the attention of my research team. We'd like you to join us as a research assistant on a classified project studying interspecies genetics. Your unique human perspective could be invaluable. Matthew's mind raced. This opportunity could be a chance to prove humanity's worth to the galactic community, to gain powerful allies. But it would also mean less time to help Draco and gather evidence against VexCorp. Before Matthew could respond, his communicator buzzed. It was Krazy's talk, his voice tight with urgency. Human Matthew Carter, report to my office immediately. There have been developments. As Matthew hurried through the Academy's corridors, he noticed groups of alien students engaged in heated discussions. Snippets of conversation reached his ears. Words like human, resistance, and tak dominance, repeated with increasing frequency. Krastalk's office was a hive of activity when Matthew arrived. The tak official fixed Matthew with a stern gaze. The situation has escalated beyond our control. Your actions have inspired a movement among the student body, challenging the established order. The Galactic Council has taken notice. Matthew's heart raced as Krastalk continued. Representatives from various races, including a human diplomat, are en route to assess the situation. Their findings could reshape the future of interspecies relations at the Academy and beyond. As Matthew absorbed this information, he realized he stood at a crossroads. With Draco suspended, evidence of a conspiracy in his hands, a prestigious research opportunity on the table, and a delegation from the Galactic Council approaching, the choices he made in the coming days would have far-reaching consequences. Matthew took a deep breath, his mind already formulating a plan. He knew that his next moves would not only determine his future at the Academy, but also potentially shape the course of human-alien relations for generations to come. Matthew's mind raced as he left Krastalk's office, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The arrival of the Galactic Council delegation, including a human diplomat, presented both an opportunity and a challenge. He needed to act quickly, but carefully. As he strode through the Academy's bustling corridors, Matthew made his decision. He tapped his communicator, sending a message to Professor Zixon. I accept your offer. When can I start? The response came almost immediately. Excellent. Meet me in Lab 7 in 1 hour. Matthew spent the next hour gathering his thoughts and preparing for what lay ahead. When he entered Lab 7, he found Professor Zixon hunched over a complex array of holographic displays. Ah, Matthew! Zixon's gelatinous form rippled with excitement. I'm thrilled you've joined us. Let me show you what we're working on. As Zixon explained the intricacies of their interspecies genetics project, Matthew's eyes widened. The potential applications were staggering, far beyond what he had initially imagined. But more importantly, he saw an opportunity. Professor, Matthew interjected, pointing to a schematic of a microscopic device, is this part of the project as well? Zixon's eye stalks swiveled towards the display. Ah, yes, these are experimental nanoscale surveillance units. We're developing them to monitor cellular changes in real time. Why do you ask? Matthew's heart raced as he formulated his response. I was thinking, could we potentially use these to gather data on a larger scale, say throughout the Academy? Zixon paused, considering. An interesting proposition. It would require some modifications, but yes, it's possible. What did you have in mind? Over the next few hours, Matthew outlined his plan, carefully omitting any mention of VexCorp or the conspiracy. He framed it as a study of interspecies interactions in various environments, emphasizing the potential scientific value. Zixon, captivated by the possibilities, agreed. This could provide unprecedented insights into xenosociology. Let's get to work. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. By day, Matthew immersed himself in the genetics research, his unique human perspective leading to several breakthroughs. His work on adaptive DNA sequences drew particular interest from Zixon and the team. By night, Matthew pored over the data streaming in from the modified surveillance devices he had discreetly placed throughout the academy. Slowly but surely, a pattern emerged. Vexacor's activities, once shrouded in plausible deniability, became increasingly clear. As Matthew built his case, tensions at the academy escalated. Reports of harassment against non-Tok students, particularly those who had shown support for Matthew, grew more frequent and severe. One evening, as Matthew analyzed the latest data in his quarters, an alert flashed across his screen. He sat bolt upright, his blood running cold. The feed showed Vexacor and two other Tok students entering a restricted area near the Academy's main power core. Matthew sprang into action, racing through the corridors. As he approached the power core, he heard muffled voices and the sound of equipment being manipulated. "Hurry up," Vexacor's translated voice hissed. "We need to be gone before the systems detect the anomaly." Matthew's mind raced. He needed to stop them, but he couldn't reveal his knowledge without compromising his entire operation. Then he remembered a detail from his work with Zixon, a quirk in the power core's failsafe system. He dashed to a nearby control panel, his fingers flying over the interface. Using his access as a research assistant, Matthew initiated an emergency diagnostic sequence. Alarms blared throughout the facility. "What's happening?" one of Vexacor's accomplices cried out. "We've been detected," Vexacor snarled. "Abort the mission." Matthew heard the sound of retreating footsteps. He waited until he was sure they were gone before entering the power core chamber. The sight that greeted him confirmed his worst fears. The sabotage attempt had already been set in motion. Drawing on everything he had learned over the past weeks, Matthew set to work. His hands moved with precision, rerouting power flows and adjusting quantum stabilizers. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he raced against time. Just as the core began to emit a dangerous whine, Matthew input the final command sequence. The system pulsed once, twice, then stabilized. He sagged against the control panel, exhausted but triumphant. As if on cue, the door slid open. A group of Academy officials rushed in, led by a striking figure Matthew recognized from briefings, Ambassador Murray, the human diplomat. "What in the world happened here?" Murray demanded, her eyes darting between Matthew and the still humming power core. Matthew straightened, meeting the ambassador's gaze. "Ma'am, I believe we have a situation that requires the immediate attention of the Galactic Council delegation." Murray's eyes narrowed, assessing Matthew. After a moment, she nodded. "Very well. I want a full briefing. Mr. Carter, ma'am. Matthew Carter." As they left the power core chamber, Matthew's mind was already formulating his next moves. He had the evidence, he had the attention of the delegation, and now he had the chance to expose the truth and potentially change the course of human-alien relations forever. But as he followed Ambassador Murray, a pang of worry shot through him. Somewhere in the Academy, Draco was still suspended, her fate hanging in the balance. Matthew steeled himself for what was to come. He had set events in motion that would have far-reaching consequences, and he knew that the real challenges were only just beginning. As Matthew hurried after Ambassador Murray, his mind raced with the implications of what had just transpired. The power core incident had thrust him into the spotlight, and he knew he had to seize this opportunity to expose the truth. In the days that followed, Matthew found himself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. He presented his evidence to the Galactic Council delegation, meticulously detailing Vexacor's sabotage attempts and the broader conspiracy within the Tok government. The council members listened with rapt attention, their expressions ranging from shock to outrage as Matthew's presentation unfolded. The aftermath of these revelations sent shockwaves through the Academy. Vexacor and his accomplices were swiftly apprehended, and an extensive investigation into the Tok faction's activities was launched. As the dust settled, the Galactic Council recognized the need for sweeping reforms to prevent such incidents in the future. Matthew found himself appointed to a newly formed committee tasked with implementing these reforms. The committee's first meeting was held in a grand chamber, its walls adorned with holographic displays of various alien worlds. As Matthew took his seat among representatives from a dozen different species, he felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. "Mr. Carter," began Zelenara, a Quarian diplomat leading the committee, "your insights will be invaluable as we work to reshape the Academy's policies. What do you suggest as our first course of action?" Matthew leaned forward, his voice steady as he addressed the group. "We need to start by addressing the systemic biases that allowed this conspiracy to take root. I propose a comprehensive review of all Academy protocols, with a focus on ensuring equal treatment and opportunities for all species." As the committee delved into its work, Matthew's days became a blur of meetings, policy drafting sessions, and heated debates. He found allies in unexpected places, like Zorak, a Vesperian scholar who had faced discrimination due to his species' chrysalis stage. "Your courage in standing up to the Tok faction has inspired many," Zorak told Matthew during a break between sessions. "We have a real chance to make lasting change here." Despite the progress being made, Matthew's thoughts often strayed to Draco. Her suspension caused great concern on his conscience, and he was determined to clear her name. During a particularly intense committee meeting, Matthew seized an opportunity to broach the subject. "Esteemed colleagues," he said, rising to his feet, "while we work to prevent future injustices, we must also address those that have already occurred. I move that we review the case of Draco of Zalthori, whose actions were instrumental in exposing the conspiracy." The chamber erupted in murmurs, some supportive, others skeptical. Ambassador Murray, who had become one of Matthew's strongest allies, spoke up in support. "I second the motion. It's time we reconsider how we view telepathic abilities in light of recent events." As the committee agreed to review Draco's case, Matthew felt a glimmer of hope. However, his elation was short-lived. The next day, he received an urgent message from Professor Zixon, requesting his immediate presence in the lab. Matthew arrived to find the lab in a state of controlled chaos. Holographic displays flickered with rapidly changing data streams, and the air hummed with the energy of breakthrough. "Matthew!" Zixon's eye stalks swiveled excitedly. "We've made an astounding discovery. Our analysis of your DNA has revealed an unprecedented level of adaptive potential. Look at this." The professor gestured to a display showing a complex molecular structure. "This sequence here? It's unlike anything we've seen in other species. It could be the key to enhancing resistance to extreme environments across multiple races." As Matthew absorbed the implications of this discovery, his communicator buzzed. It was a message from the Academy's disciplinary board, confirming a formal hearing for Draco's case. The date was set for 2 weeks from now. Matthew's mind raced. He now had 2 weeks to prepare Draco's defense while balancing his committee responsibilities and his work with Zixon. As he left the lab, he nearly collided with a group of students engaged in a heated discussion. "Did you hear?" One of them, a centaurian with iridescent scales, whispered excitedly. "They say the humans' research could change everything. We might finally have a chance to explore the methane lakes on Titan." Matthew slipped past, his thoughts whirling. The potential applications of their research were vast, but he couldn't let it distract him from Draco's plight. He needed a plan, and he needed allies. As he rounded a corner, he found himself face-to-face with Garvox, a senior Tok administrator. The alien's mandibles clicked in what Matthew had come to recognize as a sneer. "Ah, Mr. Carter," Garvox said, his voice dripping with false politeness. "I hear you've been quite busy lately. One might wonder how a mere human student has gained so much influence so quickly." Matthew met Garvox's gaze steadily. "Through hard work and a commitment to truth, Administrator, the same principles this academy was founded on." Garvox's eyes narrowed. "Indeed. Well, do be careful, Mr. Carter. It would be a shame if your ambitions were to lead you astray." As Garvox stalked away, Matthew felt a chill run down his spine. He had just made a powerful enemy, and he knew the real battle was only beginning. With Draco's hearing approaching and forces aligning against him, Matthew steeled himself for the challenges ahead. He had come too far to back down now, and the fate of not just Draco, but potentially the entire Academy, hung in the balance. Matthew's tenacity to face the challenges ahead faltered as a wave of dizziness washed over him. He stumbled, his vision blurring as he reached out to steady himself against the corridor wall. The stress of recent events, combined with sleepless nights and constant vigilance, had taken their toll. "Mr. Carter!" Ambassador Murray's voice seemed distant as Matthew's knees buckled. He felt hands supporting him as his world faded to black. When Matthew regained consciousness, he found himself in the Academy's medical bay. The sterile white walls and soft hum of medical equipment were a stark contrast to the bustling corridors he last remembered. As his eyes focused, he noticed a human doctor in a crisp white coat studying a holographic display of his vital signs. "Ah, you're awake," the doctor said, turning to Matthew with a reassuring smile. "I'm Dr. Eliza Chen from the Earth Embassy. How are you feeling?" Matthew attempted to sit up but felt a wave of weakness. What happened?" "You collapsed due to extreme exhaustion and stress," Dr. Chen explained, gently pressing him back onto the bed. "Ambassador Murray called us in to assist with your treatment. We've been working with the Academy's medical team to ensure you receive the best care possible." As Matthew processed this information, he noticed a group of alien medical professionals huddled around a nearby console, engaged in animated discussion with another human doctor. Their tentacles and eye stalks moved excitedly as they compared notes and examined data streams. Dr. Chen followed his gaze. "Your case has sparked quite the collaboration. We've been sharing knowledge about human physiology, and in turn, we're learning fascinating things about alien biology. It's opening up new avenues for interspecies medical care." Over the next few days, Matthew's strength gradually returned. During his recovery, he received a steady stream of visitors. Professor Zixon was among the first, his eye stalks quivering with concern and excitement. "Matthew, my boy," the professor said, settling into a chair beside the bed. "How are you feeling? We've made some remarkable progress in your absence." Matthew sat up, his interest piqued. "What kind of progress?" Zixon's tentacles waved enthusiastically as he explained. "We've accelerated our research on telepathic abilities. You won't believe what we've discovered." The professor went on to detail their findings. Genetic markers for telepathy were present in multiple species, not just isolated races like Dracos. This revelation had profound implications for interspecies communication and understanding. As Matthew absorbed this information, a thought struck him. "Professor, what about Draco's hearing? Has it happened yet?" Zixon shook his head. "It's been postponed due to your condition. This has given us more time to build a stronger case in her defense." Relief washed over Matthew, quickly followed by perseverance. "We need to compile all our research into a comprehensive report. If we can show the potential benefits of regulated telepathic abilities for galactic diplomacy, it could change everything." The professor nodded enthusiastically. "Precisely my thinking. We'll create a proposal for an ethical development and regulation program. It could revolutionize interspecies relations." As Matthew's health improved, he threw himself into this work with renewed vigor. Between physical therapy sessions and medical checkups, he and Zixon labored over their report, carefully outlining the potential benefits and necessary safeguards for telepathic development across various races. Meanwhile, the Academy buzzed with activity. Matthew learned from his visitors that student demonstrations in support of him and Draco had grown significantly. The movement, now known as Unity and Diversity, had captured the attention of media outlets across the galaxy. One afternoon, as Matthew reviewed their latest draft, he felt a strange sensation. It was as if he could sense the emotions of those around him, fleeting impressions of concern, curiosity, and excitement. Disturbed by this experience, he confided in Professor Zixon. The professor listened intently, his eye stalks swiveling with interest. "Fascinating. We must run some tests immediately." After a battery of examinations, Zixon delivered the startling news. Matthew was developing latent telepathic abilities. His unique human DNA, combined with prolonged exposure to alien environments and his close association with Draco, had triggered this unexpected evolution. As Matthew grappled with the implications of this discovery, the Academy's political landscape shifted dramatically. Garvox, threatened by the growing support for Matthew and Draco, implemented strict new security measures on campus. He cited concerns about telepathic infiltration and human agitation as justification for his heavy-handed approach. This move backfired spectacularly, further galvanizing the student body against Garvox's faction. The unity and diversity movement grew stronger, with supporters from various species coming together in unprecedented solidarity. As Draco's rescheduled hearing approached, Matthew faced a difficult decision. His newfound abilities could be key to her defense, but revealing them publicly carried significant risks. It could make him a target and potentially affect humanity's standing in the galactic community. Torn between his desire to help Draco and the potential consequences of his actions, Matthew sought advice from Ambassador Murray. The ambassador listened gravely as he explained his situation. "This is a delicate matter, Matthew," she said, her brow furrowed in thought. "Your abilities could be seen as a promising sign of human potential, but they could also be perceived as a threat. We need to approach this carefully." As they discussed strategies, Matthew's developing telepathic senses prickled. He caught fleeting impressions of malevolent intent, a group planning something dangerous. Concentrating, he focused on these thoughts, piecing together fragments of a sinister plot. "Ambassador," he interrupted urgently, "I think we have a bigger problem. There's a group of extremist Tok students planning an attack on the administrative building. They want to destroy evidence related to the conspiracy and disrupt the hearing." Murray's eyes widened. "Are you certain?" Matthew nodded grimly. "As certain as I can be. We need to alert security immediately." As they rushed to inform the Academy's security forces, Matthew knew that the coming days would be crucial. The prevention of this attack could change everything, forcing even Garvox and his supporters to confront the positive potential of regulated telepathic abilities. With Draco's hearing looming and the fate of human-alien relations hanging in the balance, Matthew steeled himself for the challenges ahead. He knew that his next actions would not only determine Draco's fate, but could also reshape the very fabric of galactic society. Matthew took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. The hearing room buzzed with tension as he stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. "Esteemed members of the disciplinary board," Matthew began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "Before we proceed with Draco's case, there's something crucial I must share." He paused, scanning the faces of those present, the board members, Ambassador Murray, Professor Zixon, and the sea of students and faculty. Taking another deep breath, he continued, "I have developed telepathic abilities." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Murmurs of disbelief and excitement filled the air. Matthew raised his hands, calling for calm. "I know this is unexpected, but I can demonstrate. I'd like to ask for volunteers to participate in a telepathic link." Ambassador Murray stood immediately. "I volunteer," she said, her voice firm and clear. Professor Zixon's eye stalks swiveled excitedly. "As do I," he added, moving to join Matthew. Several students from various species also stepped forward, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Matthew closed his eyes, concentrating on establishing a connection. The room fell silent as everyone watched intently. Suddenly, Ambassador Murray's eyes widened. I can hear him," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "He's sharing an image of Earth, of the Academy. It's incredible." Professor Zixon's tentacles quivered with excitement. "Fascinating. I'm receiving the same impressions. The clarity is remarkable." One by one, the other volunteers confirmed their experiences, each describing the same vivid mental images Matthew was projecting. The room erupted in amazement as the reality of Matthew's abilities sank in. Garvox, who had been watching with growing alarm, leapt to his feet. "This is preposterous," he sputtered, his mandibles clicking furiously. "It must be some kind of trick." Matthew turned to face him calmly. "It's no trick, Administrator Garvox. My abilities are real, and they've developed naturally. This proves that telepathy isn't limited to specific races. It's a potential that exists within many species, including humans. The head of the disciplinary board, a venerable Arcturian with shimmering blue skin, leaned forward. "Mr. Carter, this is an extraordinary claim. How did this come about?" Matthew explained the circumstances of his ability's emergence, with Professor Zixon eagerly jumping in to provide scientific context. As they spoke, holographic displays flickered to life, showing their research findings on the genetic basis of telepathy. "You see," Zixon explained, his tentacles gesticulating excitedly, "the genetic markers for telepathy are present in multiple species. Matthew's case is proof that these abilities can be awakened under the right conditions." Ambassador Murray stepped forward, her eyes shining with possibility. "Members of the board, esteemed colleagues, we stand at a pivotal moment in galactic history. This discovery could revolutionize interspecies communication and understanding." As the implications of Matthew's revelation sank in, the focus of the hearing shifted dramatically. What had begun as a disciplinary proceeding for Draco now became a debate about the future of telepathy in galactic society. Seizing the moment, Matthew and Professor Zixon presented their proposal for a comprehensive program to study, develop, and regulate telepathic abilities across all races at the Academy. They outlined strict ethical guidelines and safeguards to address concerns about privacy and misuse. "We have an opportunity," Matthew said, his voice resonating with conviction, "to turn what was once feared into a tool for unprecedented cooperation and understanding between species." As the debate unfolded, Draco stepped forward. Her voice was steady as she addressed the board. "My unauthorized use of telepathy was driven by a desire to protect not just Matthew, but the entire Academy. I uncovered a conspiracy that threatened the very principles we stand for." Her impassioned speech, coupled with Matthew's demonstration, visibly swayed many of the board members. The atmosphere in the room shifted, with growing support for a new approach to telepathy. Garvox, seeing his position weakening, made a desperate attempt to regain control. "This human must be manipulating us all," he accused, pointing a trembling appendage at Matthew. "How do we know he's not influencing our thoughts right now?" A Medusan student with glowing tendrils spoke up, her voice echoing with a strange resonance. "As a naturally telepathic species, we can assure you that we detect no manipulation from Matthew. His thoughts are open and honest." Other telepathic species in attendance nodded in agreement, effectively shutting down Garvox's accusations. The hearing reached its climax when a group of students from the Unity in Diversity movement entered the room. They carried with them a holographic petition, its glowing sigils representing thousands of Academy members. "We, the undersigned," their spokesperson read, "call for comprehensive reforms to promote inclusivity, including the integration of telepathic studies into the curriculum and increased protections for minority species." The board members conferred quietly, their expressions grave as they weighed the evidence and arguments presented. The room held its breath as the head of the board stood to deliver their decision. "In light of the extraordinary circumstances and evidence presented," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber, "we have reached a unanimous decision. Draco is hereby exonerated of all charges." A cheer went up from the assembled students, quickly hushed as the board member continued. "Furthermore, we endorse the proposal for a regulated telepathy research and development program. We believe this marks a new era for the Academy and for interspecies relations as a whole." The announcement was met with thunderous applause. As the implications of the decision rippled through the assembly, Matthew caught Draco's eye. They shared a moment of silent understanding, both aware that their lives and the future of the galaxy had just changed irrevocably. As the celebrations began, Matthew knew that this was just the beginning. The real work of implementing these sweeping changes and navigating the new realities of his abilities lay ahead. But for now, surrounded by the excited chatter of his fellow students and the proud smiles of his mentors, he allowed himself to feel a sense of accomplishment and hope for the future. Future. As the excitement of the moment began to subside, Matthew realized that this was just the beginning of a long and challenging journey. In the days that followed, Matthew and Draco found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of activity. The academy buzzed with energy as students and faculty alike grappled with the implications of Matthew's revelation and the board's decision. Professor Zixon wasted no time in setting up the new telepathy research program. His lab, once a quiet sanctuary of alien botany, now hummed with activity as researchers from various species collaborated on understanding and developing telepathic abilities. Matthew and Draco became integral parts of this research, spending countless hours in the lab, undergoing tests and experiments. They worked tirelessly to help other students unlock their latent abilities, guiding them through the process of establishing mental connections. As weeks turned into months, their efforts began to bear fruit. The first breakthrough came when a Medusan student successfully established a telepathic link with a human counterpart. The room erupted in cheers as the two exchanged thoughts and images across species barriers. This success was soon followed by others. A Tok student formed a connection with a Zalthori, while a group of humans linked minds with an Arcturian. Each new achievement brought them closer to their goal of fostering understanding between different races. However, their work was not without challenges. Some students struggled with the mental strain of telepathic communication, while others grappled with the ethical implications of their newfound abilities. Matthew and Draco found themselves not just teaching techniques, but also counseling their peers on the responsible use of telepathy. As their first year in the program drew to a close, the impact of their work began to ripple outward. News of the Academy's breakthroughs spread across the galaxy, catching the attention of diplomats and leaders from various worlds. Ambassador Murray, beaming with pride, informed Matthew of an unprecedented diplomatic summit being planned. The Galactic Council is interested in using telepathic communication to facilitate negotiations between historically antagonistic races, she explained. They believe it could lead to a new era of interstellar peace. The prospect was thrilling, but Matthew couldn't help but notice the toll their work was taking on his relationship with Draco. Long hours in the lab and constant demands on their time left little opportunity for them to be alone together. One evening, as they walked through the Academy's arboretum, Draco's bioluminescent patterns flickered with a hint of melancholy. "Matthew," she said softly, "do you ever wonder if we're losing ourselves in all of this?" Matthew paused, realizing he had been so caught up in their work that he had neglected to consider the strain it was putting on them. He reached out, both physically and mentally, establishing a gentle telepathic connection. Through their link, he felt the swirl of Draco's emotions, pride in their accomplishments, excitement for the future, but also a deep longing for the simpler times they had shared. He realized with a pang that he felt the same way. "I'm sorry, Draco," he said, squeezing her hand. "I've been so focused on changing the galaxy that I forgot to pay attention to us." They spent the rest of the evening rekindling their connection, sharing memories and dreams through their mental link. As they sat beneath a canopy of glowing alien foliage, Matthew made a silent promise to himself to find a better balance between their work and their relationship. Their purpose was tested sooner than expected. The next morning, they were summoned to a meeting with Ambassador Murray and the Academy's board. As they entered the conference room, Matthew sensed an air of anticipation. "Matthew, Draco," Ambassador Murray began, her eyes shining with excitement, "your work has not gone unnoticed. The Galactic Council has extended invitations to both of you for positions that could shape the future of interspecies relations." She turned to Matthew first. "You've been offered the role of Earth's first telepathic ambassador to the Galactic Council. It's an unprecedented opportunity to represent humanity on the galactic stage." Matthew's heart raced at the prospect. It was an incredible honor, but as he glanced at Draco, he felt a twinge of uncertainty. Murray then addressed Draco. "The Zalthori High Council has requested your leadership for a new cultural exchange program. You would travel to the farthest reaches of the galaxy, sharing your knowledge and fostering understanding between diverse species." Draco's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with a mix of excitement and apprehension. The opportunity was everything she had ever dreamed of, but accepting would mean long periods away from the Academy, and from Matthew. As the implications of these offers sank in, Matthew and Draco exchanged a look of silent understanding. They both knew that these opportunities could change the course of their lives and potentially reshape the galaxy. but they also recognized the challenge it posed to their relationship. Ambassador Murray, sensing their hesitation, softened her tone. I know this is a lot to process. Take some time to consider your options. The galaxy will wait for your answer. As they left the meeting, Matthew and Draco walked in silence, their minds buzzing with the weight of the decision before them. They found themselves wandering to their favorite spot in the Academy's botanical gardens, a secluded area filled with the familiar flora of Draco's homeworld. Sitting beneath the glow of bioluminescent plants, they turned to face each other. Without a word, they established a deep telepathic connection, ready to confront the choices that lay ahead and the future that awaited them among the stars.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.